Yes, it is true. I might be leaving Studio One. But don't worry, Studio One, it's not you, it's me. But don't call us, we'll call you. But all joking aside, so for those of you that don't know, so PreSonus has just released Studio One 6 just a few days ago. And let me first say this, let this be the first thing I say. I still think that Studio One is an amazing piece of software. It's an amazing DAW. It's just that, we've been waiting for 2 years for a new major update of Studio One. And I probably expected too much of it. I just happened to have made a video just a few weeks ago about some features that I hoped that they would add to Studio One 6, especially one feature which is my favorite one, and that is live looping features. I kind of convinced myself that they would add that to Studio One 6, and when I found out they didn't, that was a little bit disappointing. So I haven't upgraded yet, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not 100% sure I will. But that's just me. Again, I probably expected too much, so that's why I said Studio One, it's not you, it's probably me. Some people are very happy with this update. I saw a video of John Mike. I sometimes watch his videos. He has some interesting stuff, especially about gear, and he seemed very enthusiastic. So if he means what he says in the video, he seemed very pleased with this update. So there are people who are very happy with Studio One 6. However, of course, I also watched a little bit of the presentation of the guys at PreSonus, so especially Joe Gilder and Gregor Baerle. They did a very, very good job, as always, at presenting some of the new features. But the new features themselves, in my opinion, seem a little bit underwhelming. That's the word. Let me give you an example. So the EQ has been updated. Pro EQ, as it is called. I've always loved using Pro EQ, by the way. I think it's a great equalizer. But now with version 3, so Pro EQ 3, they've added a dynamic mode, which means that it's now also a dynamic equalizer, which of course is great, but it feels like most other EQs have had this for years. The same is true for the de-esser. The de-esser is a new feature in Studio One 6. Can you imagine? I mean, again, great that it is finally there, but you would have expected this years ago. Now, and then they've also added a feature that I really like and I've actually been waiting for many years. And that should also tell you something. So this feature is called Track Presets. And what it is if you want to open a multi-output instrument like Omnisphere, for example, so you want to have 8 outputs, maybe you want to have 8 MIDI inputs, you want to set up the routing, it's always a little bit of a hassle to set that up. Now with this feature, you can take away a lot of that hassle because you can save these settings. You can save the track configurations, you can save the routing settings, the inputs, so you don't have to go through that whole process every time you bring in an instance of Omnisphere. So great feature, but to give you an example, Reaper has had this for many years. Now, of course, they also added some features that are actually new, and new as in, at least personally, I haven't seen before anywhere. And one of those features is the channel overview. Let me read it from the website. So the channel overview window provides a single consolidated view of all channel parameters, including input controls, inserts, sends, and cue mix sends for the selected channel. So basically, you can have a window pop up and you can see everything that is going on connected to that channel. So may not be the most earth-shattering feature of all time, but it still seems very, very useful, and this might well be my favorite new feature of Studio One 6. Now, of course, they added a lot more features. Just go check out the website of PreSonus. I will leave a link in the description so you can check out exactly what is new in this update. With the features I just mentioned, with these examples, I just wanted to illustrate how I feel about this release. And as I mentioned, it feels a little bit underwhelming. And I'm not quite sure why. I mean, is it just because I had too many expectations? Or is it maybe because everything has been done before, there's nothing left to explore? Might that be it? Now, just today I saw a video from a guy who calls himself Deuce Iray, and he talked about Fender purchasing PreSonus. Now, for those of you that don't know, so Fender, you know, the guitar maker, they purchased PreSonus about a year ago. So PreSonus is now owned by Fender. Now, the CEO of Fender a little while ago mentioned in an interview that he thinks that Studio One is too complicated, and he hinted that he wants to make it simple. He wants to simplify it. He wants to make it more accessible and more user-friendly. I think that Studio One is already one of the most user-friendly DAWs out there, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, he is the CEO. He must have some good ideas about the strategy business-wise, but for us as end users, do we want Studio One to be simplified or not? I don't know, but anyway, you know, it could possibly explain why this update is so modest, in my opinion. Now, to be perfectly clear, in the interview, it didn't become clear if the CEO of Fender really meant that he wants to actually strip down Studio One, or if maybe he wants to add another version, maybe a simplified version of Studio One alongside of Studio One Professional, you know, so that wasn't really clear. So I guess we're gonna have to wait and see how it all develops. Okay, my final thoughts on Studio One 6. As I mentioned, I am a bit underwhelmed by the new features, but I still think that Studio One is absolutely an amazing DAW that I can very, very easily recommend to almost anyone. But I made a promise to myself, so I was gonna wait for the release of Studio One 6. If PreSonus didn't implement live looping features, I was gonna start looking elsewhere. Now, Studio One 6 has been released, no live looping features, but it is very hard to let go, so I'm still not very sure if I will upgrade, if I won't upgrade. What I do know, I will start looking around, do some investigating into some other DAWs as well, before I make my decision. Okay? Well, that's basically it for today. Thanks for watching. Go check out Studio One 6 for yourself and let me know what you think about it. Okay? Talk to you soon.